Okay, hi and welcome back. So in this second video we're going to have a look at these three, I still can't count them, these three techniques here. Okay, so what we're going to do is detect a rate of change. So we're going to see how fast values are changing. Okay, we're then going to create a trigger. So for example, if the rate of change gets above a certain level, so for example, if we're doing some air drums, something like that, now we needed to detect a strike from when the change in the motion goes above a particular value. So that's going from motion to no motion at all, for example. So we can use thresholds for that. And then the final one is we're going to create a trigger from a particular sequence of values. So we've looked at that before using match, but we'll recap that. Okay, so I don't have some Wiimotes to hand, so what we're going to do is just use continuous controllers from our MIDI controller instead, because that will serve the same purpose. So in my live set then, I've got a MIDI track set up. I'm going to choose my my MIDI controller and monitor the MIDI coming in. And then I'm going to create a max MIDI effect here. Okay, and then open that up. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this. So what we're going to do is have a control in. Okay, and then it's not really necessary for this exercise, but we're going to do it anyway because it's good practice. So just to isolate a particular controller number, we need to pair up the value and the number, like so. Okay, just make that a little bit neater, and then pack these together. Okay, and they're integers, so we can have 0, 0 or f. Not f, that's float, or I for integer, doesn't matter which. Having the 0 just initializes the object to give a reading of 0. Okay, and then what we're going to do is let's remind ourselves what controller we have. So I'm just going to use one of my faders. Okay, it's number 20. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to root 20, and anything that begins with 20, the value will come out of the left inlet like this. Yeah. So what we're going to do is see how fast this is changing, because what I want to do is be able to use that controller. Here I am motioning with my hands again. You might hear my bracelets rattling about. We're going to see how fast we're changing that fader. Okay, and to do that, we're going to use a technique that's actually used by Sam Terakajian here, the dude 837, to do the Wii drums. So we're going to use this little bit of code here. Okay, so this T, but rather than using TFF, we're going to use TII. Okay, because we're working with an integer. So MIDI values are integers. So T actually stands for trigger. And this is really useful to make sure we know what order events are happening in. So let's just neaten this up over here. Let's get rid of that. And so basically what we want to do is subtract the previous the previous value from the one that's coming in. So when a number arrives at trigger, it will be put out of this one first, okay, and then this one, okay. So when this one arrives here, this one will still be the argument for what it's being subtracted away from, okay. So that will give us the difference between the sets of values that are coming in. Okay, so let's try. It's useful to visualize this kind of stuff, so let's use a slider to do that. Okay, we'll see what we can do here. So if we go move the slider slowly, you won't see very much happening at all. But if you move it quick, you should be able to get that going nice and high. Okay, we can set the range of this to, because we're never going to get it to be 128, go from 0 to 128. So maybe we can set this about halfway, say 63. Even then, that's going to be tricky. Okay, so what we want to do now is basically detect when that's really quick. Okay, so we're going to say, so for this we're going to do when it's greater than I don't know, when it's greater than 10, okay, then there will be it'll go to 1, and if it isn't greater than 10, it'll be a 0. Okay. Okay, and so we can move it slowly there, but if we move it quick, we get a bang. We get a 1 being output. Okay, now what we want to detect is to detect the transition from 0 to 1, and then create a bang from that. And as Dude837 has done, we're going to use something called TogEdge to do that, and then that gives us, we can make a bang from that. Okay. So what we should see is if we move it up slow, we don't get anything, but if we move it up at a certain rate, then we do, and then we could put a live.numbox in here to play about with our threshold, and we can change how easy or not it is to trigger that bang. Okay. Okay, so yeah, we're doing that with a MIDI controller at the moment, but what we could do is then do that with a gestural controller, and then use that to make a MIDI note. So let's do that. So we can do, remember, make note, and then the velocity and the duration. Make a note out. Remember to connect the velocity as well. Okay, and we can specify a pitch value here. So we can do that using an object called int, which is useful for storing values.